So anyway, that was President Biden. A little difficult to hear there, but basically what he was saying is what he was not saying in that soundbite. He was once again refusing to admit that the situation at the southern border is a crisis. However, he's now saying he's prepared to make major changes to the border. Meanwhile, Oklahoma Senator James Lankford is urging Republicans to be patient, and he's trying to work out a border deal with Senate Democrats. He was hoping to announce an agreement in the coming days, but has backed off that timeline because talks remain difficult and complex. House Speaker Mike Johnson recently coming out against the deal, saying, quote, absolutely not, after details of that draft were leaked online. And we'll go through that. Let's bring in Georgia Congressman Richard McCormick. He's a member of the House Foreign Affairs and Armed Services Committees. Congressman, good morning to you. Here is these leaks. And this is where Johnson seems to be digging in his heels. $50,000 green cards, extra green cards a year. That's an increase. Immediate work permits to every illegal released from custody, which is like 85%. Taxpayer-funded lawyers. So that's what he's saying, not so fast on.
Well, the whole premise is ludicrous. First of all, to say that you're going to issue visas to everybody who's released. You're talking about, in the last 3 months, an entire congressional district worth of people. Right now, it doesn't really matter because just in the last 3 months, you have that many people being funded on what they eat, how they're housed, their medicine, their education, anybody who has a baby. That's all taken care of already. That's out of your taxpayer dollars. And that's just in the last 3 months. An entire congressional district. In the last 3 years, you've had 13 congressional districts released into America, and that's what we're paying for. But you start talking about giving visas to all these people, lawyers to all these people, it just compounds the problem. It rewards the bad behavior that caused this to begin with. This isn't a real solution. This is actually part of the problem.
Yeah, well, and also, too, you got to remember that there are things that have changed. But, how about remain in Mexico? I mean, there are things that can be done, but it looks from first blush with these details that got leaked that the Democrats have no interest in securing the border. And this is as we're talking about impeaching, Mayorkas.
Now, of course, it's not a solution. They don't want a solution. If they think that these people were coming here to vote for Republicans, then they'd all of a sudden have a solution. But they want to literally confound the way we vote. They want to give power to people who are low-skilled workers who are going to be reliant on the government. That's going to make them lean to the left because they absolutely believe that the government is the solution to everyone's struggles. And they want a voter constituency here that will vote for people who believe in government rather than in individual accomplishments. And I'm not saying that you can't come from nothing to everything in the United States. That's what we're all about. But we have to know who's coming here. We have to know what rate. We have to set it appropriate to what we can support and on our terms, our legal terms. We already have laws. Obama was famous for quoting to say that we were a nation of laws, and that's why he kept our sovereign brothers. That's why he deported people, that he followed the law. They're the same laws that exist today. All Biden has to do is actually support the laws that already exist. You don't have to make new ones. And we have H.R. 2 on his desk anyway. If the Senate would ever get him and do their job, we don't need to compromise more. Just do the laws that we already have, and we'd be fine.
Exactly. There are laws in the books. They're just not enforced. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and House Speaker Johnson did reach an agreement on a short-term government funding bill. This would avert a partial government shutdown. Lawmakers releasing the text of the bill yesterday. It funds the government through March. Schumer says he's going to put the bill up for a vote tomorrow. Utah Senator Mike Lee threatened, though, a government shutdown over border security. He was on with Maria yesterday. I want you to watch this.
When are Senate Republicans going to get serious about the border?
Tell the Biden administration, if you want your administration funded, secure the border or shut it down. The very worst thing we could do right now is give them more money for their priorities.
Congressman?
Yeah. First of all, realize that even Biden realized he's so deeply underwater on this issue. He wants to solve it, too. He wants the border to at least appear like it's being secured. So he's going to come to some sort of compromise, whether it's with or without this continuing resolution. What I'm worried about is everything else, though. It doesn't make any difference in the overall budget. We're not tackling debt. We're not actually looking at reining in executive powers. The REINS Act is still off the table. I don't think it's good enough. Now, I understand the realities of having 3 special elections, having Leader Scalise out, and now having another injury from Hal Rogers auto accident. So we do have some really narrow margins that Mike Johnson is dealing with. So I understand there's realities to that, but right now it's just not good enough.
Real quick before we go, I want to bring in Liz Peek. Liz Peek, go ahead.
Good morning, Congressman. Thanks for joining us. I really can't understand this deal at all. It seems to me it does absolutely nothing to stem the flow of people coming into the country illegally. And that's basically the issue here. So why would Biden sacrifice all these spending priorities of his, including Ukraine funding, Israel funding, when he and also his own polling on this issue is catastrophic? Why doesn't he just do something, or why don't the Democrats in the Senate do something to stop people coming into the country? It is mind-boggling.
Well, looking at what the Senate's come up with as a quote-unquote compromise, it's not a compromise at all. It's given away. I hate it when we call compromises things where we're actually giving up ground. This is not a compromise at all. We're not getting what should be done for the United States, what's overwhelmingly popular, which is to secure our border, remain in Mexico. All the things that are incorporated into H.R. 2, which has already been passed by the House. Anything but that is not even a compromise. Because quite frankly, like you said, all Biden has to do is snap his fingers and go right back to what we did when we had Obama as president or Trump as president, when we actually secured our border. So don't tell me this is a compromise and pretend like you're doing something about it when our debt and the southern border are both going to hamstring the United States into the future.
Congressman Richard McCormick. Congressman, thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.